Hello and a warm welcome to the Irish Angle, our weekly show looking back at all the things in Ireland and abroad to do with horse racing. I've Nagle Johnny Ward here as usual. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, we get stuck in the big one last week, York, and it started off with a bang, didn't it? City of Troy, an impressive winner of the Juddmonte International. Emma, what did you make of it?
Sure, look, it was brilliant. I suppose coming into the race, the hype, I suppose, maybe hasn't been as strong as it was earlier in the year. Like at the start of the year, he was kind of the one that everyone kind of couldn't keep off the tip of their tongue. But I suppose like coming back off that Eclipse performance, well, he did win the Eclipse, obviously. It definitely was a bit below par, like from what you were expecting from him. I think he was the lowest rated horse on time for ratings in this century. On that performance, I think it was only rated at 120. But in fairness, everything showed up here, and kind of the billing before the race was kind of one of the races of the season, and I don't think it disappointed. Ryan Moore bounced out, kind of changed the tactics. That's kind of one thing about him. He's really, really tactically versatile, like, isn't he? He doesn't seem to mind being in behind. He can go from the front, which will probably stand him as well when he goes to America. Of course, that's kind of the talk about where he'll go next. I was kind of hoping they might go for the Irish champion after it, to be honest. It'd be class to see him in Leopardstown or even for the Arc or something like that. But it kind of sounds like they're just going to go straight to America with him now, which will be really, really interesting. I suppose all the comparisons to the greats, like people are, all the papers and social media, like people are just wanting to compare him to how does he line up to all of Aidan's best ones, Galileo and Hawkwing, I think, where he's two highest rated, and how does he line up to See the Stars and Frankel. It's obviously really hard to compare between generations, but it's kind of an interesting storyline to the back of it. And yeah, I'm a massive City of Troy fan. I thought it was just brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing here is it is a bit of a pity we're not going to see him again, isn't it? We've only seen him once in Ireland when he won a maiden last July in the Curragh. Haven't seen him since, Johnny. Not a good thing for Irish racing, but it's fantastic. He's trained in Ireland, even if he doesn't run here.
Yeah, like I suppose when you go to watch these maidens in Ireland, you see the Dubawi horse that won the first at the Curragh on Saturday again, and the pedigrees that they have. I suppose you don't know what you're going to expect. It's a bit like See the Stars, Vinny. Like See the Stars, like he ran in the Champion Stakes as a 3-year-old in Ireland, but all his other racing was like in England or in France. So the day he obviously didn't run in the Irish Derby, and the day he rocked up at Leopardstown, there was a bit of a doubt that week that he might run because of the ground. So it is disappointing with regard to City of Troy that we're not seeing him in Ireland. But I suppose it means you can travel over to York and places like that and watch him, or you could go to Epsom. And I'm with them. I'm a big fan of this horse. The only time I was at York was to watch the 2012 renewal of the race. So it's 12 years ago now when Frankel won it, and Frankel was rated 140 at that time, like 140 to be. I'd love to own a herder rated 140. This Frankel was rated 140, and St. Nicholas Abbey, I can't remember. I backed St. Nicholas Abbey that day in some shape or form, maybe to finish the first two or something. He beat him by 7 lengths and a nose. Like, he absolutely destroyed him. St. Nicholas Abbey was a proper good horse. So in the context of what we've seen, City of Troy, he's not Frankel, and his figures wouldn't be up there with Frankel, but he's an exceptionally good racehorse. It was a fascinating race to watch tactically. The way that he ended up out in front, I was humming and hawing for the hour before the race. Will I back him? Will I not? He was 5-4. Couldn't really see any negatives. I'm looking at like Blue Stocking and Ambient Friendly are second and third favourites. Like, he's absolutely better than them. Like, so what's going to beat him? Couldn't really find Anta to beat him. And after a furlong, I was gutted I hadn't backed him because he was out in front. And then you have his pacemaker going up the inner as well, almost like blocking off the inner avenue for Antonellis to come up. And the race was kind of was run to suit. I'm looking at some of the analysis on the race post saying he'll never get as favourable a setup again. I don't think that's the case at all, in the sense that if you watch him in the Derby, like, the most visually impressive thing he's ever done visually, and I'm talking about visually now without having the notebook out or without having your watch out, was what he did in the Derby when he came through the field in a messy race. So this horse is very tactically versatile, and I love the idea of him going to the Breeders' Cup in a race in which at Delmar it's going to be like you're turning all the time. They break very fast with the gates over there, so the gun will be put to his head in terms of performance. But that's brilliant to watch. He's a really epic name, City of Troy, and I'm delighted now. I see a lot of I see some people were calling me out for my comments here. Well, one person was calling me out for my comments here 3 races later, by the way, after I think I said after Guineas, to me he looks like he hasn't trained on. I'd be surprised if I'm surprised that he's bounced back to the way he has, but I'm delighted I was wrong. And you know, I'm really delighted that he's turned into the horse that he is, and he probably is the best Aidan has trained. Like I don't like these 2 year performances were excellent. Over a mile and 2, a mile and a half, maybe a mile and a half would be his optimum trip, but he beat a good field very readily. If you took out the runner up, he's about 5 lengths better than everything else. And on good firm ground, he's an exceptionally good racehorse, albeit he's not Frankel yet.
It's just a pity he never met White Birch this season. I think that was the only one I'd say like that. That's why I'd love to see him.
I was gutted when the eclipse didn't happen.
Because like he's probably the standout older horse now. It's obviously no fault of Aidan O'Brien or anything. He's been there and danced every dance, but just to see him come up against that 4-year-old White Birch, that would be a cracker. But yeah, apart from that, like he's just done everything, like, hasn't he?
Yeah, can't see White Birch turning up in the Breeders' Cup Classic on the dirt, can you? Anyway, so that'll never happen. But I presume that's probably going to be one more run, is it? Is all we're going to see City of Troy and Delmar, 2nd of November. That'll be it, and then he's off to stud, one would imagine. There's no way they're going to risk him at 4.
I saw your blog as well, Vinny, where you know you're on about the lads and how when you think of the lads, you think of going for a couple of pints. And we were thinking Galway, where we say like the girleen or the laddeen, which is derived from the old Irish of een, meaning small. And like my mother always tells a story about how the neighbour said he was the finest laddeen and he was in his mid-60s. The lads are going to be lads until they're in their 90s, the way Aidan is talking about them.
Yeah, I know. But isn't it hard to believe that, look, whatever about John Magner, obviously he runs the whole show. He's the mastermind behind it all. But the way Aidan describes it, he talks about, the lads have decided to go to the Breeders' Cup Classic. But it's hard to see Derek Smith and Michael Tabor, like 2 ex-bookmakers, are now making these decisions. I don't think they've any hand actor part in it. But obviously they have money-wise in the system. But realistically, it's hard to see that, is it, Emma? What do you think? Surely Aidan and his team must have an input here, and Ryan Moore and all those other people.
Sure, I suppose it's kind of a group conversation, like, isn't it? It would have to be like, obviously all the lads are pumping a lot of money into it. They must have some kind of a say in it. And you'd imagine Ryan Moore would have a massive say in it as well. I mean, you know, Ballydoyle, they've never won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and it's going to take a special type of horse to go there. And like he could be, like, obviously Johnny was saying there, like he does jump really fast in the gates. Obviously it's going to be a totally different story in America. They jump awfully fast over there, but you'd imagine, I don't know, maybe did Ryan want to ride him from the front just to see could he do that in America then, because, you know, I don't think they're going to want him like covered in behind horses getting dirt splattered in his face. He mightn't like that at all. So I'd say it's obviously a group decision, you'd imagine. But Aidan definitely has a fairly big say in it, you'd imagine, and Ryan as well. But sure, look, they're all putting the money in, and I'm sure they all have a fair say in it.
It's a logical thing, though, Vinny, right? Because the Champion Stakes absolutely would suit him in Ireland. If now the weather is probably taking a bit of a turn in the moment in Ireland, and I'm not sure they'd actually really be that bothered about risking him on soft ground. But the Arc is far too much of a gamble to go at the Arc. So because he's out of a Galileo bred dam, he basically can't really. That kind of slightly stymies him in terms of where he can go at stud in Europe. So the Galileo bred dams are complex for him. It's too much of an inbreed for him. So his options in Europe are slightly complicated by the fact that all these incredibly well-bred Galileo dams are not really open to him. You could do it, but by my kind of little looking into it, it's not going to happen. But then if he goes over and wins on dirt, that opens all the options for him in terms of his state's kind of credentials as a stallion. And also, like, you need to have an American pedigree probably to go on the dirt. He obviously is by Justify. The fact that you have an Irish horse is going to be massively hyped. Like, I can't wait to see him run the Breeders' Cup on dirt. Like, it's very, very rare. I remember them trying it with George Washington. He didn't have the pedigree. It didn't work out, obviously, and it had a tragic end. But for him to go over, it adds another layer to it. And there's obviously a massive commercial decision behind it because, as I say, his prospects at studs massively change if he wins on dirt.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. That's why he'll never run again, isn't it? If he does win on dirt, that's it. It's gone. But anyway, look, we'll all look forward to that in November. Looking back to some of the other stuff, we'd some stories. There's no doubt about it. Extensio, Pat O'Donnell. Emma, what did you make of that winning?
That was brilliant. I remember, was it a month or 6 weeks ago, Sylvia, Pat's daughter, rode Extensio to win in Fairyhouse. And brilliant scenes after that, brilliant interview, Pat O'Donnell and everything. And came in, I kind of flying under the radar then a bit coming into York after winning really, really easily in Fairyhouse, and came in anyway. And yeah, geez, one like head in his chest, and the interview afterwards, he was kind of one of those ones, the memorable ones. And I was only reading Rory Lardy's piece in the Field, the story of how they kind of came about getting Extensio. I think he walked out of the sales ring unsold at 800 quid. And he bought them for a bit less than that. So he was some bargain to come to York with a horse that cheap, a bit like a Uick story, I suppose. I think he got the nickname Teabags then because he only went out to buy teabags and ended up coming back with a horse or something along those lines anyway. So yeah, no, it was brilliant. And one of those interviews that really sticks out. I think Pat trained at Cheltenham Festival winner, but it was his first flat winner in the UK, I think, as far as I know. And what I wanted to do it with, it was a massive family, and I think his wife Una owns it as well. So yeah, it was brilliant and kind of one of those stories everyone kind of likes seeing, isn't it?
And it's a winning you're in for the Melbourne Cup as well, isn't it? Which is just unbelievable. Will there even be an Australian runner in this the way it's going? Looks like they're all going to be Irish, as far as we can see, with Crystal Black and the rest of them. What about that, Johnny? Will we win the Melbourne Cup with one or other of these small yards?
Yeah, what was that line that Patrick Bullen said? I think was when Joseph won the Melbourne Cup. He said we went halfway around the world to be beaten by a horse that's basically 20 minutes down the road or something to that effect. And like the Irish loving for the race is class. Imagine Ger Keane and Pat O'Donnell. Like, how many flat winners would they have between them in 10 years? I mean, Ger Keane and flat, they just don't. It's just the way it works. You don't get horses. And I have to say, lads, I was watching York and I was getting such a kick out of that. Big fan of Joey Sheridan and Pat O'Donnell having a winner at York. And I was thinking, like, this is what the flat used to be. Like, you've got these stories now where I enjoyed York immensely. You had a nice spread of kind of, Aidan was dominant on that day and was the Wednesday, and then Pat O'Donnell winning. But like, this is just way better crack than the National Hunt. You see, like the winners of Royal Ascots that some Irish trainers had, and the spread of winners even on classic weekends. And I've spoken to people in HRI about their attempts to bring back jumps racing, but it's almost flipped at this stage. Where like the jumps is obviously dominated by the Arabs and Coolmore and all of that, but these stories now are actually more where the small man and small woman is winning. It's actually happening more on the flat than National Hunt. And Pat O'Donnell, I mean, I'd never heard of the sire before. I had to look him up afterwards. And Extensio's a horse. I remember tipping him up one day off 70 and being delighted that he won a small race, never thinking this had happened. And kind of half followed him because Pat O'Donnell is such a character. But like, this is just a brilliant story. And the interview afterwards, and it felt to me more like, this is kind of why the flat has become more alluring, that this seems to be possible, because it's bloody well not possible in National Hunt racing anymore.
Yeah, to think you can get one for less than 800 quid here, the price of tea bags or whatever it is, to be maybe a Melbourne Cup contender.
Another one about that, I'll just kind of build on that point as well. Imagine, like, we heard at the end of Constitution Hill's season that it's too much of a risk to send the punters down, but Aidan O'Brien's going to send City of Troy to America to go in the dirt. Like, it's just chalk and cheese, isn't it?
Isn't it just? Yeah. Different game altogether. There's no doubt the way it's turned out. Anyway, looking at some of the other ones from York, content. 100th individual Group 1 or Grade 1 winner for Galileo. That's astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. Kind of a feeling week to get it as well, I suppose. Content by Out of Mecca's Angels. A dual Nunthorpe winner. I was only listening back to the commentary at the Queen of the North, and yeah, I think he was waiting on nearly the year. I think he was sitting on the 99, so they were probably getting a bit anxious whether he was going to land it or not. But yeah, no, and yeah, it's incredible. Was he 8-time champion sire? I suppose Frankel's the standout of his progeny. He's a dual champion sire himself, and yeah, like his impact kind of going to go on for generation and generation. I suppose probably the best horse Aidan O'Brien trained, you'd imagine, maybe until City of Troy came along. But yeah, no, it was unbelievable. And Content, like she's a filly who's kind of improved massively for that step up to the middle distance. So she was running okay, I suppose, over the mile, but since stepping up to kind of 10-12 furlongs, she's unbelievable. I just couldn't believe the performance. She pulled so hard the whole way throughout the race, and kind of Aidan's comments afterwards kind of put it into perspective, the kind of impact Galileo has had on he's what kind of stamp he put on his progeny, I suppose. When they kind of are ready to give up, they just kind of find another leg. There's kind of no end to them, he was saying. And it's definitely true with her, because I actually backed her on the day, and after seeing the way she pulled for the first, I'd say after 3 furlongs at all, I was beat. Like I thought she had no chance of staying it out over the 1.5 miles after pulling like that. But she had some engine to see it out the way she did.
This is why as well, Vinny, I think the flat is just so fascinating. So Galileo said he's 100 Group 1 winners. It was only on the 10th of August that Frankel had his first 100 Group winners, and that was in a record time. And that was the horse at Lake Victoria, who is out of, and she's very well bred as well. I'm trying to remember what her dam is, but like Mecca's Angel, obviously, is also the sire of Bedtime Stories. So you have the horse that fell in at the Curragh at such fancy odds out of Meckle's Angel. So Galileo got to 100 Group 1 winners. Couple of weeks after his son got to one, who's now going to be probably even bigger than him again, got to 100 Group winners. So there's a mad symmetry to that.
And can you name all 100 Group 1 winners for Galileo there? Johnny just rattled them off for me.
Jeez, how long do we... I wouldn't be great in quizzes now, but yeah. How many? What would be the overs under, Vinny? About 30 maybe?
Yeah, it'd be a fair go if you got 30 of them. Anyway, we'll move on. Friday, we'd Vauban winning. No, look, I'm not going to talk about it much, but that was a shock for me, considering the horse was beaten, 20-something lengths only a week earlier in the Curragh. The Nunthorpe, Bradsell, Holly Doyle, 10th Group 1 winner for her. Now, that's some performance as well, Emma. She's some rider.
She's very, very good, and she's really, really strong. Like I actually, where did I meet? I met her in person, just in passing. It was actually in Leopardstown. I couldn't get over how small she actually was, but she's like a little power ball. Like she's.
What did she make you?
I know. I only met. She only walked past me. I didn't know her at all. But she's. I couldn't get over the size of her. It was actually like you know, I was actually in Delmar this time last year, and I went racing there, and the jockeys there, they're like compared to the lads here, they're getting taller and taller, I suppose, especially the young lads. But yeah, she is a brilliant rider, and I suppose track bias played out in York as well. And Brad said, look, he was obviously a very good horse in his day. He won one of those 3-year-old races in Wild Ascot, but I suppose the track bias in York played a big hand in the Nunthorpe, and Big Abe's the big disappointment there. But they were kind of blaming the draw a bit for that. But yeah, Holly Doyle, she's as good as anyone, I suppose, when she gets the horse, isn't she?
Yeah, I think she is. Yeah, I think she's fantastic. Her and Rachel have been flying some flag for the ladies the last few years, but Holly, particularly on the flat, is fantastic in my opinion. She's as good as any of them. The other thing, we'll move on to Saturday. I still can't believe this. The Ebor. All week we're talking about Queenstown of Aidan O'Brien's big gamble from an Irish runner in the Ebor. Then as the week goes further on, we're on Hip Hop Delore. Willie Mullins backed into favourite, and then the favourite wins the race. It's another Irish one. Hadn't even thought about it. Magical Zoe, Henry de Bromhead. How does he keep doing this, Johnny? Big races. He's a big man for them, isn't he?
Yeah, so I started going out with my partner, whose name is Zoe, around the time about Princess Zoe's running, and I used to give her the odd tip for Magical Zoe as well, but never thought Magical Zoe be winning a race of this nature. And like, she was relatively exposed from the flat by the time she went, down the jumps route. And I was talking to John Kiley lately about was it Toe the Line, a horse by Shantou that became a good flat horse, but you don't expect flat horses to have the ability that she has. And as you say, Vinny, like again, the market got it right. 500 grand race, Billy Lee for Henry de Bromhead. Again, showing the appeal of the flat at the moment in terms of the mix of winners. It was a hell of a performance. It was obviously a bit of a messy race, but Magical Zoe to win at this stage of her career off 102 as convincingly as she did. Kudos to all round. 300 grand as well to the winner and the winning owner. So an amazing performance. And I have to say, I was a bit surprised by it myself.
All right, talking about surprises, a couple of other things during the week, or 3 things in total for me that were surprises, were to do with Stewart's decisions. Start off with a couple of them in England. Monday and Wednesday, with 2 very similar incidents at Windsor and Kempton. On Monday, with James Doyle, stopped riding a horse called No Retreat in the closing stages. He said the horse was hanging on him and was became unbalanced. So he stopped riding, got beaten a short head. Stewards take no action. 2 days later, we've a race in Kempton where a guy called Callum Shepherd is in full drive on a horse, hitting him with his whip. He stops using the whip about 3 strides before the finishing line. And literally at the finishing line, he eases up. It ends up a dead heat. It looked, to all intents and purposes, watching the race live, it looked like he'd won. He just won narrowly, but it turned out the photo finish said no, that they couldn't split them, and it was a dead heat. And the stewards end up bopping him with an 18-day suspension for that, Emma. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was incredible, really. Kind of 2 incidents like that to happening in close thing, and it kind of just shows the inconsistency of stewarding, like, doesn't it? Because watching the James Doyle one first, obviously he came out and gave a very eloquent description of why he stopped riding. It was hard to really see what he meant when you watched back the replay. He was saying the horse jinked and he lost his balance a bit, but didn't really look like he lost his balance. And like, I think we've had this debate before, like should jockeys be allowed in and to give I suppose they should be allowed to say something, but just to see the way Callum Shepherd was treated so differently after a much less more minor offence, I suppose. Like James Doyle really eased up and kind of stopped pushing a few strides before the line. But I was watching Callum Shepherd's one as well, and after seeing I hadn't seen the race live, but I saw all the few bits on social media and things like that, and I watched it back. And to be honest, at first view, I wasn't sure had he actually stopped riding. Like, it was very, very marginal. It must be just the last stride. He just stood up in his irons. And whether or not he actually won the race now is a bit of a debate as well. He was posting pictures himself on social media, which looks like he may have been in front, but these pictures are always kind of hard to make out. But like 18 days for that, I thought was ridiculous. Like he stood up in his stirrups the very, very last stride, made no difference to the horse whatsoever. I mean, it was so minor, and like these small errors of judgments can have such a massive effect. Like 18 days for a jockey, like imagine losing 18 days of earnings for any other profession. It's incredible. And yeah, it just kind of shows the inconsistency, I suppose, the difference between the two, and the fact that both happened in the same week kind of highlighted it even more, like, didn't it?
Yeah, and just one pixel. That's all it took. One pixel between winning and a dead heat, because if he'd been one pixel better or further ahead with his horse, he'd have been the winner. What did you make of it, Johnny?
Yeah, the James Doyle one, it was funny. I met a taxi driver going to the race in Sligo, and he this is a couple of weeks ago, and he stayed in touch with me anyway. And he's basically a fan of punting horses, and he actually punts some decent money. But he texted me that he'd very good word for the horse that James Doyle was riding that evening at Windsor, and I was basically like, this horse can't be me. So then I hadn't seen the race, and then all these messages were coming in afterwards, and I was like, oh my God, that looks bad. Then I listened to James Doyle's explanation, and I was like, what? Like, I don't ride horses, but hang on a sec now. Are you trying to tell me that you were falling off the horse and all you could do was basically kind of just stay on him, and that just happened to mean that by you staying on the horse, you lost the race by a short head? I mean, I looked at the head on. The horse was edging left, to be fair. I looked at the side on. He eased up on the horse and he was beaten. He should have been given, for me, like pretty much the maximum ban that you can get for that, because he eased up on the horse and the horse should have won. But his explanation was bought by the stewards. Maybe they said, oh, it's James Doyle, and his record is very good in relation to this. But I thought this was astounding, to be honest. Like, for me, the horse was definitely running around a bit, but he lost the race because he eased up on him.
Yeah, it was the easing up. It wasn't even the fact that he stopped riding. He actually eased up was the issue, and gets beaten a short head. Seemingly, now I don't know Windsor at all, bar what I see on TV, but by all accounts, as you go past the winning post in Windsor, they go around the bend to the left. So the horses are tending to head that way anyway. So you can see where that was part of it. I think all horses tend to edge that way, and he was a bit worried about trying to pull this horse up after crossing the line. But there's no doubt he should have been a bit more animated, at least towards the finish, and he would have won. And your punter up, your taxi driver from the north, would have got a few quid.
Yeah, the other thing that only came to my mind the other day as well, the Jers Gigi thing at Wexford. So Jers Gigi was awarded that race at Wexford when Jack Kennedy rode her, and I was there, and this kind of got me thinking. Like, and I spoke to a couple of people in the press room about this since. So Jers Gigi was I'm just trying to think. She was placed second. Birmingham, Alabama was placed first, and this was in Wexford. This is only a few weeks ago, and I was talking to connections of Birmingham, Alabama, Birmingham, afterwards, or Birmingham, Alabama, whatever the horse is called. But that night, there was a steward's inquiry, and the result was reversed, and Jers Gigi was awarded the race. And I thought it was desperately harsh on Birmingham, Alabama, because Jers Gigi had jumped violently across Birmingham, Alabama at the last. There was subsequent interference on the part of the Delaney horse, but it wasn't as much for me at all. It was a bit of a 6 and 1/2 dozen of another, but like the Birmingham, Alabama incident at the last was very, very pronounced. Lo and behold, the stewards reversed the result that night, and it went to appeal. And I remember, was the name Alan Delaney was on to me afterwards, connections of the runner-up, and I said, you should definitely appeal this. They won the appeal. So say Vinny, right, you laid the horse that night, finished second, was awarded the race in an inquiry, so you had to pay out. Then was actually the race was taken off in a subsequent appeal, and you still had to pay out. So you basically lost on a result where twice the horse was awarded the race, lost the race in a short-lived stewards inquiry. So you had to pay out in that, and you have no recourse for getting your money back. And it's like, how is that fair?
No, that's the thing all around it, isn't it? But anyway, another one we're going to look at or talk about at least is Killarney on Saturday, with a horse of Willie Mullins's Paul Townend Arctic Fly won a beginner's chase. Standard stuff, except for the fact that he didn't jump the second fence. What happened was he's coming to jump it. He's coming up by the wings of the fence. He's coming in, and just at the last second, the horse dives out to the left. He would have normally jumped through the wing and crashed out, and that would have been it. But luckily, whatever way he jumped at it, he pushed the wing to one side of the fence and went through the gap. He didn't actually jump the fence at all, but anyway, afterwards there was a stewards' inquiry held into it, and the stewards deemed that he did jump the fence, because they are basically saying, due to a regulation called Regulation 9, which I've looked at, and I can't find where they're finding this, but what they're basically saying is there's a wing on either side of a fence or a hurdle, and if you go between those wings, you are classed as having jumped the obstacle. I didn't know that was the case. Did you, Emma?
I thought you'd have to jump it, and yeah, I actually hadn't seen it live, but watching it back, it was really like I just imagine you'd have to go over the fence. He went around the fence, like you said, pushed the railing kind of sideways and managed to stay within it, but didn't jump the fence. And yeah, you can imagine just reading the report of the race. I say people were fairly shocked they kept it. I'm not sure it was Paul Townend surprised he kept it. I wouldn't mind hearing his comments on it. But yeah, I've never seen anything like it. And maybe the rules say just stay between the wings, but I would have imagined you'd have to jump the fence to win the race. Very odd one. Yeah, no, I don't even know what to say about it, to be honest. If I was watching it live now, I would have assumed it would have been reversed, because just jumped one less fence than the rest. You'd imagine you can't win the race then, can you?
Yeah, that's what I would have thought. What did you make of it, Johnny? Did you know this, that you could only have to jump between the wings?
Yeah, I actually wonder what happened in running in it, because I just to be honest, I only watched it back this morning. I'd missed that race, and I'd never seen this happen before. I can vaguely see why the stewards come up with the rule, because he was the right hand side of the railing and he sort of jumped over the brush a bit, but it was news to me, to be fair.
Yeah. Anyway, one other thing that you brought to me attention there, Johnny, is about a bookmaker on the track at York, Jeff Banks, who's well known on social media. It turns out that he paid out a punter, or one of his staff paid out a punter, 10 times as much as he should have got on Saturday at York. A horse called Tropical Storm, some guy had 100 quid in it, should have got back 375 quid, but when he went up to collect, he was handed 3,750 quid and then disappeared into the ether. He's gone with the money, never came back. And of course, the whole debate going on social media is, what would you do? Is that what should happen? Should you go back to the bookmaker, hand him back his money? Obviously, in real terms, yes, you should, but would anyone actually do it? What would you do in that situation, Johnny?
Well, there's absolutely no debate here. I mean, you were paid out 10 times, and I'm not on Twitter, but I was alerted to this. I think the race posted a story on it. You were paid out 10 times what you should have been paid out, and you didn't go back. Like you're basically, that's disgraceful. Carry on, particularly when on-course bookmakers they're not making a lot of money these days. A lot of them are really struggling. They're going out of the game, and morale is low. You were paid, like, if you were paid a couple of quid over, you might have some debate about it. 10 times over, and you wouldn't pay it back. It was actually the same situation, in fairness, last year to a lesser extent to Killarney, when was it Anno Mana? It was that case of mistaken identity where Johnny Feen won on a race that basically was the wrong horse, and the bookmakers, was a stewards inquiry, but a lot of bookmakers had paid out. It was the wrong horse. The bookmakers had paid out, and I think some of the bookmakers told me nobody came back to give the money back. Now that was a slightly different situation, but like if we as punters are looking for a fair deal off bookmakers, James Joyce had a line: the only decent people I saw at the race course were the horses. If we are trying to, as punters, to get a fair crack at the whip here, and you go on and behave like that, where you take 10 times the money, and you basically, that is thievery. That's basically taking money that's not yours, and if you don't give that back, that for me is the same as robbing money, because it's really, really immoral to do that. And and you see Jeff Banks as well. I don't know Jeff, maybe he's not the most popular person in the ring, but a lot of the replies that he's getting on social media basically saying the punter was right. I want nothing to do with that sport, to be honest. If that's your level of fairness, you may as well go somewhere else, because I don't want to be involved in a sport like that. There should be a good war between the punter and the bookmaker. There are a lot of the bookmakers on course are a really, really decent bunch of people. A lot of them struggling, and if that's the way punters want to carry on, I don't want anything to do with that sport.
I agree. There's an element of honor in all of this anyway, isn't there? It's your wits against theirs and everything else, and you're willing to put your money where your mouth is and so on. So you should be willing to take it on the chin if you get it wrong, and in the same way that if you get paid too much, it's a mistake. And the same way that if you handed them too much, you'd like to think they'd give it back to you too. Emma, Anything like that ever happen to you?
No, no. Yeah, like it's kind of hard to. Like, it's hard to believe that they did go away with the money because, like Johnny said, it wasn't a small mistake. Like, it was a significant, like 10 times more than they were supposed to be paid out. It's hard to believe anyone would go away with it, to be honest. And like, I was really shocked to see the replies on Twitter to this, that people were kind of trying to justify it. And I don't know, people like trying to make it look, they kind of mixing it up with, like, going against big corporations like Paddy Power and Betfair, but like, you're not taking money off them, you're taking money off like independent bookmakers on course. So, are just normal people trying to make a living as well. It was ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. Like, people were comparing it to finding money on the street, like, but it's not like finding money on the street. It's like seeing like a grand shop out of someone's pocket and then not telling them. It's just picking it up and going away home with it. It was, yeah, like the replies were actually nearly more surprising than the post. There's people who are obviously, plenty of people would do it, but I couldn't believe the amount of people who were trying to justify it as well. It was incredible.
That's the other thing, Emma. Like, this was an individual mistake. It wasn't even a mistake by Jeff. It was a mistake by one of his employees who obviously felt really bad about it. So there's a human error to it as well. And it's just like, how this is even a debate. And I wouldn't even go and watch the replies because I'm so depressed by social media now that I don't want to be depressed even further. But is this the world that we live in where, like, people think this is actually acceptable?
Sure, look at people have always been ducking and diving, trying to rob a few quid off bookmakers from the beginning of time. I'd say I remember lads used to go into betting offices on a Saturday afternoon. They'd wait till it was very busy, and then they'd be throwing dockets up after the off of sprint races when the horse had already won, trying to get their fiver or tenner in, and everything else not noticed. I've another one from years ago. I remember in Leopardstown, I was heading out to the betting ring one day, and a well-known personality at the track asked me to have 500 quid on the favourite in the next, handed me a bundle of money. I said, no problem, went out, had the bet, and the horse lost. That was the end of that. Didn't think any more of it till I was leaving the track that day, and the bookmaker, a guy called Ronnie Fogarty, he had a big voice on him. Ronnie started shouting at me from a distance about the bet, that the 500 quid was light by 60 quid. There wasn't the full 500 in it. Now, he knew it wasn't my bet anyway. But he was saying, don't be betting for that man again.
I remember working in the Ladbrokes in Finglas back in the day, Vinny, and I don't know if you see this on the screen now. It's probably not very clear. Maybe it doesn't come up, but yeah, it's kind of like that. So he used to write. This guy used to come in and he'd write like that. So it looked like a trap 5, but it could also be a trap 3. So he used to perfect it, that like if trap 3 won, he could say it was 3, and if trap 5, sure, it was trap 5, I was back on that. It's not my first rodeo here.
Yeah, not a bad idea, I suppose. Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on.
Problem was neither of them won.
We'll get a horse to follow from each of you from last week. I might start off with one just for the sake of it. We're talking about small yards heading to the Melbourne Couple. There's a small yard, Cormac Farrell. He looks to have a couple of nice 2-year-olds. And one of them, I particularly like the look of how it ran in Nace yesterday in the first race. If anyone had seen it, it was a rough race with a lot of scrimmaging in the closing stages. And his filly called Too Late Baby Doll finished third, but was promoted to second after the interference. What I liked about this was the attitude. This horse had every chance to just throw in the towel and say, not for me here. It was getting bumped and bashed everywhere, but kept going. And you'd think with her attitude alone, she'll win a race. And I also noticed that the stable, who had very few horses, I would think, very few 2-year-olds too, but they also won one of those barrier trials last month with another 2-year-old called Eastern Oasis. So they might have a couple of nice ones in the yard. One to watch out for maybe. Anyway, is Too Late Baby Doll. Right.
Nace, from Nace yesterday as well. Firebird. I just thought she should have won Valley over. Well, no, to be fair, she was beaten by a brilliant ride. A young Andrew Slattery got a shandy up for Fozzie Stack to beat Firebird on the line. No, it was a brilliant ride. She came over on the outside, but Firebird had she'd shown good guts. In fairness to her, she's been very good since she joined Paddy Toomey. She kind of blazed for her first 2 starts in Cork and Nace, and she came back here then for the Group 3. But she kind of had battle on again, and she won within her own group. I suppose she just didn't see the one flying down the outside rail. But I'd say she's probably one who's probably waiting to win a kind of race of that kind of, again, a kind of Group 3. She's very well bred as well. I think she's out of a sister to Blue Stocking. So yeah, she looks like a nice filly, and she was probably a bit unlucky not to win it yesterday. But I'd say she'll get her day in the sun yet.
Good stuff. On to you, Johnny.
Yeah, I see. If Emma's the baby, though, I was called a hack in the Phoenix this week, so it's good to be. I thought it could be a lot worse, like called hack Johnny Ward. So it's like that's all right. And yeah, it was like I think a piece I'd done with Brendan Duke, which made the Phoenix. Which, if you don't buy the Phoenix, it's actually the best bit of racing gossip because the race media is so bad now. There's so few journalists out there that the Phoenix isn't the worst place for gossip. I always hoped I'd make it, and I mean, called a hack is probably not too bad. I like Walk on the Beach that won the bumper in Killarney on Thursday. I don't know if you've had any footsteps in the sand, Emma, but obviously they're well known for being quite hot. And this is a rare example of footsteps in the sand pedigree being National Hunt bred on the dam side. So there's a mixture of National Hunt and obviously footsteps in the sand. The horse is settling and won this very well, actually. It wasn't a bad bumper. I like him as a horse going forward for Joseph. I think for John Gleeson did the ride and Liam and Brian Gleeson own him, but I liked his performance as the bumper from this hack, Johnny Ward.
Very good. And if anyone's wondering where Johnny is from today, he's in Downpatrick, in the press room in Downpatrick as we speak. So that's what all the activity is around him, if you noticed any of it during the show. Anyway, that's it from us. Thanks for watching, and we should be back again this time next week. So bye for now. See you all soon.